I stopped by the supermarket to buy my daughter's favorite red roses before going to her house for dinner. It was supposed to be an ordinary visit, but near the entrance, my old neighbor suddenly grabbed my hand, her face filled with worry. "Your son-in-law has been hiding something from you," she whispered. At first, I thought it had to be a misunderstanding, but the truth she revealed next sent a chill through my chest. In that moment, I knew I couldn't ignore it. I had to uncover every lie and expose the truth, no matter what it cost, because protecting my daughter mattered more than anything else. Welcome, everyone. Before we continue, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. A quick note. This is a fictional story with dramatized elements. The names and details are imaginary, but the message behind it carries a deeper meaning. Now, what exactly did my neighbor tell me that day? Let's find out. I never imagined that a quiet Sunday afternoon trip to the grocery store would become the moment that changed everything. The King Soopers on Wadsworth Boulevard in Lakewood wasn't my usual stop. I had only started coming here after my daughter Clara moved to Highlands Ranch with her husband Arthur 4 years earlier. The store happened to sit right along the road to their house, so it slowly became part of my routine. I would stop by, pick up a bottle of wine for dinner, maybe some flowers, sometimes a bag of those chocolate-covered almonds Clara loved so much. It turned into a small ritual. King Soopers first, then Clara's house. That particular Sunday, my mission was simple: buy red roses. Clara had invited me over for dinner, and she mentioned she was cooking again after several exhausting weeks at the hospital. Red roses had always been her favorite. When she was little, she used to stand beside her mother at the kitchen table watching Sarah carefully trim the stems and arrange them in a glass vase. Clara loved the way the petals opened slowly over a few days, filling the house with color. I was standing near the floral display by the entrance examining a bouquet when I suddenly heard a familiar voice behind me. "Harold Whitman, is that really you?" I turned around and felt a flash of surprise. Linda Warren stood there wearing a King Soopers apron, her silver hair neatly pulled back. She had been my neighbor for 15 years before moving away nearly 2 years ago to live with her son and daughter-in-law. We hadn't spoken since. "Linda, I had no idea you were working here." She gave me a tired but warm smile. "Started a few months ago. Just part-time at the register. Keeps me busy." Then her expression changed. She glanced around the entrance area as if making sure no one was listening. When she spoke again, her voice dropped to a near whisper. "Harold, do you have a minute? I need to talk to you about something." Her tone made my stomach tighten. "What is it?" It's about Arthur." My hand instinctively tightened around the handle of my shopping cart. "What about him?" Linda hesitated for a moment as though weighing whether she should continue. Then she leaned closer. "Last Tuesday," she said quietly, "I saw him here, in this store." "That doesn't surprise me," I replied. "Clara said he sometimes shops here." Linda shook her head slowly. "He wasn't alone." I frowned slightly. "What do you mean he was with a woman?" she said. "A woman, yes. Young, maybe around 30. Long dark hair. Very well dressed. She had one of those designer coats and a diamond bracelet on her wrist. The kind that sparkles when it catches the light." I tried to brush it off. "Probably a co-worker. Arthur works in real estate. He meets clients and colleagues all the time." But Linda didn't nod. Instead, she looked directly at me. "Harold, they weren't just shopping together." I felt a cold sensation creeping into my chest. "What do you mean, they were close?" she continued carefully. Arthur had his arm around her waist. She was leaning into him, laughing. The way they looked at each other. She paused. "It reminded me of how you and Sarah used to look at each other." Her words landed heavily between us. Still, I forced my voice to remain calm. "Are you sure it was Arthur?" Linda's expression hardened slightly. "Harold, I was at their wedding. I've known that boy for years." She folded her arms across her chest. When I saw them near the wine aisle, I walked over to say hello. I called out his name. My pulse quickened. "And he looked right at me," she said. "I know he recognized me." "What happened then?" Linda's face darkened. He said, "I'm sorry, ma'am. I don't know you." My chest tightened. He said that, yes. She sighed softly. Then he grabbed the woman's hand and walked away. I struggled to process the words. "He pretended not to know you." Linda nodded slowly. "Harold, we lived next door to each other for 15 years. I brought casseroles to your house after Sarah passed away. I attended Arthur and Clara's wedding. I gave them a set of wine glasses." She shook her head in disbelief. "He knows exactly who I am." I searched for another explanation. "Maybe he didn't recognize you right away." "It's been a while." "No," she said gently but firmly. "He recognized me. I saw it in his eyes." She looked toward the front registers. "He just didn't want that woman to know who I was." My throat felt tight. "Did you see what they bought?" Linda nodded. "I was working the register when they checked out. Expensive wine, gourmet cheese, fresh flowers. Roses, actually. Roses." My stomach sank. "The total was over $200, she continued. "He paid with a credit card like it was nothing. $200. For a casual grocery run. Clara had mentioned recently that money was tight. She'd been picking up extra shifts at the hospital, working long nights and double weekends. Arthur had told her that his real estate commissions had slowed down. That was the reason Clara had sent him $25,000 a few months earlier, her entire savings. Arthur had told her his mother Edith needed medical treatment and that the expenses were overwhelming. But standing there in the store listening to Linda, something about the story no longer made sense. "Thank you for telling me," I said quietly. Linda placed a gentle hand on my arm. "I hope I'm wrong," she said softly. "I truly do. But if it were my daughter, I'd want to know." I nodded. "I understand." She gave me a sad smile and returned to the checkout area. For a long moment, I remained standing beside the floral display, staring down at the bouquet of red roses in my hands. They were beautiful, deep red, full blossoms, exactly the kind Clara loved. But suddenly they felt heavier, almost as if they carried the weight of something I hadn't been prepared to face. I eventually paid at the self-checkout, though I barely noticed the screen or the total. My thoughts were racing. "I don't know you, ma'am," a deliberate lie, to a woman who had stood beside him at his wedding. I pictured Arthur's arm around another woman's waist, the diamond bracelet, the expensive groceries, and Clara working late shifts believing money was tight, believing her husband needed help caring for his mother. I stepped outside into the cold November air. The sun was already beginning to dip toward the horizon, stretching long shadows across the parking lot. My breath drifted in pale clouds as I walked toward my truck. I opened the passenger door and carefully set the roses on the seat. For a moment I stood there staring at them. Maybe Linda had misunderstood. Maybe there was a simple explanation. Maybe everything would make sense once I heard Arthur's side. But deep down, something in my gut told me otherwise. I climbed into the driver's seat and started the engine. The heater began pushing out cold air that would eventually warm. I sat there for a few seconds, hands resting on the steering wheel, staring out through the windshield. Then I shifted into reverse and backed out of the parking space. The drive to Highlands Ranch would take about 30 minutes. 30 minutes to think. 30 minutes to decide what to do. 30 minutes to figure out how to sit across from my son-in-law at dinner and pretend everything was normal. As I merged onto the highway, Linda's words replayed in my mind. They looked like husband and wife. He said he didn't know me. $200 without blinking. Clara would be waiting for me. She would see the roses and smile the way she always did. She would place them in a vase and tell me dinner was almost ready, and Arthur would be there too, smiling, acting like the perfect husband. But this time I would be watching, really watching. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel as the miles passed beneath the tires. Beside me, the bouquet of red roses rested silently on the passenger seat. Beautiful, quiet, and somehow heavier with every mile I drove. I pulled into Clara and Arthur's driveway at exactly 6:30, the bouquet of red roses still resting on the passenger seat beside me. The house looked exactly the way it always did, picture perfect in the fading evening light. White siding, black shutters, a carefully trimmed lawn that looked like it belonged on the cover of a home magazine. But after what Linda had told me at the grocery store, the whole place felt different somehow. I picked up the roses and walked up the front path before I even had the chance to knock the door opened. Clara wrapped her arms around me before I could say anything. Her face lit up with that familiar warmth that had never changed, no matter how old she got. She had changed out of her hospital scrubs and was wearing jeans and a soft gray sweater, her hair pulled loosely behind her head. "You brought roses," she said with a smile. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to," I replied, handing them over. She buried her face in the bouquet, inhaling the scent, before pulling back with a bright smile. "They're beautiful. Come in. Dinner's almost ready." I stepped inside and almost immediately something caught my attention. The purse on the small entryway table. It was a Louis Vuitton brown leather stamped with the unmistakable monogram pattern. I knew exactly what it was because Sarah had once admired one years ago when we passed a boutique window. I remembered looking at the price tag and nearly choking. $2,500. "That's new," I said casually. Clara glanced toward the table. "Oh, that," she said lightly. "Yeah, Arthur surprised me with it last week. Said I deserved something nice." I forced a polite smile. That was thoughtful. She led me into the living room, and the second thing jumped out at me instantly. The television mounted on the wall, 75 inches easily. It looked so new that I could still see the faint outline where the price sticker had been peeled off the screen. "New TV?" I asked. Before Clara could answer, Arthur's voice came from the kitchen doorway. "Got it 2 weeks ago." He walked into the room carrying a dish towel over his shoulder, smiling like he had just finished hosting a cooking show. 75 inches. 4K resolution smart system, the whole deal, he said proudly. Figured we'd treat ourselves. He extended his hand toward me. I shook it, studying his face carefully. He looked exactly the way he always did. Clean-cut, confident, polished. Not a single hair out of place. But now, after everything Linda had said, I couldn't stop myself from looking closer, searching for something behind that smooth exterior. "Business must be going well," I said. Arthur smiled wider. "Better than well," he replied. "Closed a $2.5 million listing last month. Biggest commission check I've ever seen. That's impressive." "Yeah, it felt good," he continued. "The company even gave me a bonus KPI reward for hitting my quarterly numbers." He leaned back comfortably. That's when I noticed the watch. Sleek silver band. Black dial. The Tag Heuer logo reflecting under the ceiling lights. $2,000. Maybe more. "Nice watch," I said. Arthur lifted his wrist and glanced at it with a satisfied grin. "Oh, this thing." "Yeah. Picked it up after that last deal closed. Figured I deserved a little reward." Clara returned from the kitchen carrying the roses now arranged in a crystal vase. She placed them on the coffee table before sitting beside Arthur on the couch. Without thinking, he slipped his arm around her shoulders. And suddenly, Linda's voice echoed inside my mind. He had his arm around her waist. They looked like husband and wife. I pushed the thought aside and focused on Clara. "So how's work going, sweetheart?" She let out a long breath. "Exhausting," she admitted. I picked up 2 extra shifts last week. 3 code blues in a single night. I barely slept. You're working too hard, I said gently. I know, she replied, but we've had some extra expenses lately. I wanted to help with what I asked. Before she could answer, Arthur stepped in smoothly. My mom's been dealing with some health problems, he explained. We've been covering her medical bills. I straightened in my seat. Edith, what happened to her? For just a second, something flickered across Arthur's face. It disappeared quickly, but I noticed it. Heart issues, he said. Medication monitoring doctor visits. It adds up fast. How serious is it? Clara answered this time. I sent Arthur $25,000 a few months ago, she said quietly, from my savings, to help with the treatment. $25,000. The number landed like a stone in my chest. That money had taken Clara years to save extra shifts, skipped vacations, careful budgeting. She used to talk about using it for a down payment on a bigger home someday. And now it was gone. That was very generous of you, I said, slowly my eyes shifting toward Arthur. How is your mother doing now? She's managing, he replied quickly. Not perfect, but stable. Where is she staying? Pinewood Care Center in Aurora, he said. It's not exactly luxury, but it's close enough that I can stop by. You visit often? He shifted slightly in his seat. When I can. Work's been busy lately. I nodded slowly. But my mind was doing its own math. $25,000 supposedly for medical bills. A Louis Vuitton purse, a 75-inch television, a $2,000 watch. If money was so tight, where was all of this luxury coming from? Dinner's ready, Clara said suddenly, standing up. I made your favorite tonight, Dad. Pot roast with roasted vegetables. We moved into the dining room together. The table was beautifully set, cloth napkins folded neatly beside matching plates, candles flickering softly in the center. Clara had clearly spent time making everything perfect. As I sat across from Arthur, I watched him pour wine into elegant glasses. The same kind Linda said he had bought with that other woman. He lifted the bottle, confidently filling each glass before sitting down. Clara smiled nervously. I hope it turned out okay, she said. I took a bite of the pot roast. It's perfect, sweetheart. Arthur raised his glass with a relaxed grin. To family, he said. I lifted mine and touched it gently against his. Our glasses clinked together, and as I looked across the table at him, his confident smile, his polished appearance, the expensive watch on his wrist, I felt something shift deep inside me. For the first time since I had known him, Arthur didn't feel like family. He felt like a stranger. A stranger sitting in my daughter's house. A stranger telling lies I was only beginning to understand. And as Clara smiled between us, unaware of the storm quietly forming beneath the surface, I realized something that made my chest grow cold. I didn't recognize the man sitting across from me anymore. Dinner wrapped up around 8:30. Clara gathered the empty plates from the table while I pushed my chair back and stood ready to help. Old habits die hard, but before I could reach for anything, Arthur raised a hand and flashed that easy, practiced smile of his. Let me get those, Dad, he said smoothly. You relax. He stacked the plates with quick efficiency and carried them toward the kitchen. As he disappeared through the doorway, I heard the faint buzz of a phone vibrating against the countertop. A moment later, he returned holding his phone in his hand. His expression had changed. It now carried that familiar look of professional apology, the one people use when work suddenly becomes unavoidable. I'm really sorry, he said, glancing at Clara. That was the office. Clara frowned slightly. What happened? One of my listings just ran into an inspection problem, Arthur explained, slipping the phone into his pocket. The buyer's agent wants to meet tonight to talk it through. Apparently something unexpected showed up during the inspection. Tonight, Clara asked, clearly disappointed. Dad just got here. I know, honey, Arthur replied gently, stepping closer to her. I'm sorry. It shouldn't take long, maybe an hour tops. He leaned down and kissed her forehead before grabbing his car keys from the small hook beside the door. Then he turned toward me. Harold, it was great seeing you tonight, he said with a friendly nod. We'll do this again soon. Before I could even answer, he was already stepping outside. The front door closed behind him. The house grew quiet almost instantly. Only the soft clatter of dishes coming from the kitchen broke the silence as Clara began loading the dishwasher. I stood alone in the living room, staring at the empty chair Arthur had been sitting in just moments earlier. An hour ago, I might have believed his story. But now, after what Linda told me, after seeing the Louis Vuitton purse, the enormous television, the expensive watch, after hearing Arthur calmly talk about his supposedly sick mother while wearing thousands of dollars worth of luxury. No. I didn't believe a single word he had just said. Clara returned a few minutes later, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Sorry about that, Dad, she said apologetically. Arthur's job can be unpredictable sometimes. Real estate never really sticks to a schedule. It's fine, I said. Then I hesitated, but the words were already forming. Clara, there's something I need to talk to you about. She looked curious, but not worried. She walked over to the couch and curled her legs beneath her. What's going on? I took a slow breath. Earlier today, when I stopped at King Soopers, I ran into someone. Who? Linda Warren. Clara's eyebrows lifted in recognition. Our old neighbor, that's right. How is she? She's doing all right, I said. She works at the store now. Clara nodded thoughtfully. That's good. She was always nice. I paused for a moment before continuing. She told me something about Arthur. Clara's expression changed slightly. What about him? She said she saw him there last week, I said carefully. At the store. Clara shrugged. Okay. He wasn't alone. Her brow furrowed. What do you mean? She said he was shopping with a woman, I said quietly. Clara blinked. A woman. Yes. I kept my voice calm. Linda said they looked very close. Clara stared at me for a few seconds. Then she laughed. A short, incredulous laugh. Dad, you're kidding. I'm just repeating what she told me. You're serious, Clara said, sitting upright. Linda saw Arthur with a woman, and suddenly that means something suspicious. I didn't say that. But that's clearly what you're implying, Clara. Did it ever occur to you, she interrupted, her voice sharpening, that the woman could have been a co-worker? I remained quiet. Arthur works in real estate, she continued. He works with women all the time. Agents, assistants, clients. Linda mentioned a name, I said slowly. Clara crossed her arms. What name, Amber? Clara hesitated. Just briefly. Then she nodded. Yes. Amber works at Coldwell Banker with him. Her tone carried a note of triumph. She's helped Arthur with some of his bigger listings recently. Linda said they looked like more than co-workers. Clara's eyes flashed. Dad. She stood up. What exactly are you trying to say? I'm saying Linda knows Arthur. I replied carefully. She attended your wedding. She wouldn't lie about something like this. So instead, Clara said sharply, you're choosing to believe a story from someone you haven't spoken to in 2 years over your own son-in-law. That's not what I said. Then what are you saying? Her voice had grown louder now. Defensive. I'm just saying the situation seems strange. Clara shook her head. You know what this really sounds like? What it sounds like you never liked Arthur. That's not true. Yes, it is, she snapped. Her voice cracked with emotion. From the very first day I brought him home, you were suspicious of him. You've always been looking for some reason to prove he wasn't good enough, Clara. And now you're using gossip from a grocery store to try and tear my marriage apart. I'm not trying to tear anything apart. You are, she insisted. Her eyes glistened with tears now. Arthur is my husband. He works hard. He takes care of me. I'm sure he does. And yes, she continued, her voice trembling. Maybe he bought me a nice purse. Maybe we got a new TV. So what, he earned that money. He deserves to enjoy it. What about the $25,000? I asked quietly. Clara froze. The room went still. What about it? She asked slowly. Where did it go? Her face drained of color. If his mother's medical bills are so overwhelming, I continued carefully. How does he still have money for luxury watches and expensive shopping? Clara's cheeks flushed red. How dare you, she whispered. What, my husband's mother is sick. She could be dying, Clara said, her voice shaking with anger. And you're standing here accusing him of stealing from me? I'm not accusing anyone. I'm asking questions. Well, stop asking them, she shouted. She stepped closer to me, her fists clenched. You don't get to walk into my home and interrogate me about my marriage? Clara, you don't get to make me doubt my husband because some neighbor thinks she saw something suspicious. Please just listen. No. Her voice echoed through the room. Tears streamed down her face now. You listen to me. I fell silent. Arthur is my husband, she said firmly. I trust him. Clara, get out. The words hit me like a physical blow. What I said, get out, she repeated coldly. I don't want to hear another word about Arthur or Amber or Linda or any of this, sweetheart, I said quietly. I'm trying to protect you. Protect me. She laughed bitterly. From what? From the man I love. You're not protecting me. She interrupted. You're trying to destroy my marriage. Clara, that's not true. Yes, it is, she cried. You've been doing this my entire life. Ever since Mom died, you've treated me like I'm still a little girl who needs rescuing. That's because I care about you. I'm 35 years old, she said, her voice breaking. I have a career. I have a husband. I have a life. She wiped at her tears angrily. And I don't need you barging in here trying to tear it apart. My chest tightened painfully. Clara, I love you. I know, she whispered. But that doesn't give you the right to question my marriage. She took a shaky breath. So please, just leave. I stood there, unable to move for several seconds, searching her face, hoping for some sign that she didn't mean it. But all I saw was anger, hurt, and something else. Fear. Fear that maybe I was right. If you walk out that door, she said quietly, don't call me. The words felt like glass. Don't text me either. Just give me space. My throat tightened. Clara. From now on, she continued softly, you're not my father until you can respect my choices. Something inside me shattered. I glanced toward the coffee table. The roses I had brought still stood in the crystal vase. Their red petals were beginning to curl slightly at the edges. Beautiful, fragile, already fading. Then I looked back at my daughter, my brilliant, stubborn, wounded daughter, and I realized nothing I said tonight would change her mind. Not tonight. Maybe not for a long time. So I nodded once, turned, and walked toward the door. I stepped outside into the cold November air. The door slammed shut behind me. I stood on the porch for a moment, my breath fogging in the darkness. The ache in my chest felt almost identical to the one I'd experienced the day Sarah died. But beneath that pain, another feeling slowly began to rise. A harder one. Determination. If Clara refused to believe me, then I would find proof. Real proof. Undeniable proof. Proof that Arthur was lying to her. And I wouldn't stop searching until I had it. I didn't sleep at all that night. I lay in bed staring up at the ceiling, the darkness of the room pressing in around me, while Clara's words echoed in my mind again and again. Don't call me. Don't text me. You're not my father. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face from the night before. Angry hurt, convinced that I was the one destroying her life. The look in her eyes haunted me. It wasn't just anger. It was certainty. She truly believed I was wrong. But deep down, I knew I wasn't. The hours crawled by painfully slowly. The house was silent, except for the faint ticking of the old clock in the hallway. I watched the shadows shift across the ceiling as the night slowly gave way to morning. By the time the first pale light of dawn filtered through the curtains on Monday morning, I had made up my mind. If Clara refused to listen to me, then I would find proof she couldn't ignore. Not suspicions, not stories. Proof. Hard, undeniable evidence that Arthur was lying to her. And I knew one thing for certain: I couldn't do it alone. I needed someone who knew how to uncover the truth. I needed a professional. At exactly 9 o'clock that morning, I was sitting inside my truck, outside a narrow office building on Spear Boulevard in downtown Denver. The sign taped to the second-floor window read Marcus Reeves, Private Investigations. I had found his name the night before while scrolling through search results on my laptop at 3 in the morning. Former police detective, 15 years of investigative experience, specializes in infidelity and financial fraud. The reviews were strong. People described him as thorough, discreet, and brutally honest. That was exactly what I needed. I stepped out of the truck, crossed the sidewalk, and climbed the narrow staircase leading to the second floor. The hallway smelled faintly of old carpet and coffee. At the end of the corridor was a frosted glass door with his name printed in simple black letters. I knocked. A deep voice called from inside. "Come in." I opened the door. The office was small but organized. A sturdy desk sat near the window, covered with neatly stacked folders and a laptop. 2 plain chairs faced the desk, and metal filing cabinets lined the walls. There were no decorations, no awards on the walls, no attempt to impress anyone. Just a workspace that looked like it was used every day. Behind the desk sat Marcus Reeves. He looked to be around 45, maybe a little older. His dark hair was beginning to gray at the temples, and his broad shoulders filled out the back of his chair. His face carried the kind of weathered expression you see in people who have spent years watching others at their worst. He stood up as I entered and extended his hand. "Harold Whitman." "That's right." His handshake was firm, steady. "Have a seat," he said, gesturing toward one of the chairs. I sat down across from him. "You mentioned on the phone this involves your son-in-law, Marcus," said, pulling a notepad closer. "Yes." I cleared my throat. "I believe he's cheating on my daughter, and I suspect he's lying about other things too." Marcus picked up a pen and nodded. "Start from the beginning." So I did. I told him about the encounter at King Soopers, about running into Linda Warren and the uneasy look on her face when she grabbed my hand. I repeated everything she told me about seeing Arthur with a young woman in the store. I described the way they had stood together, his arm around her waist, the way they looked at each other. Then I told him about the expensive items I'd seen in Clara's house that very evening: the Louis Vuitton purse, the 75-inch television mounted on the wall, the expensive watch Arthur had been wearing at dinner. Finally, I told him about the $25,000 Clara had given Arthur for his supposedly sick mother, and about the argument, about the moment my daughter had told me to get out of her house. Marcus listened quietly the entire time, occasionally jotting notes across the page in quick, efficient strokes. When I finished speaking, he set the pen down and looked at me. "How long have they been married?" he asked. 4 years. And before this week, you never suspected anything. No, I admitted. Arthur always seemed fine. A little too polished sometimes, maybe. But I assumed that was just part of his job. Marcus nodded slowly. Real estate agents tend to be good at appearances, he said. He leaned back slightly in his chair. All right. Let me make sure I understand what you're dealing with. He glanced down at his notes. You've got possible infidelity, possible financial manipulation, and a spouse who refuses to believe anything is wrong. That sounds about right. Marcus gave a small, knowing nod. That's extremely common, he said. People rarely want to see the truth when it's going to hurt them. So you'll help me, I asked. I can, he replied. Then he folded his hands on the desk. But we should talk about what that actually involves. I nodded. If you want surveillance, Marcus continued, that means following Arthur, documenting where he goes, who he meets, and how he spends his time. He tapped the notepad lightly. It also means identifying this woman you mentioned and investigating the financial side of things, if possible. How long would that take? At least a week, he said. Maybe longer. And the cost? Marcus didn't hesitate. $2,500 for the first week. I absorbed the number silently. That includes surveillance, background checks, and whatever financial analysis I can legally access. If I find evidence, photos, video documentation, you'll get a full report. And if the investigation takes longer, then it's $1,500 per week after the first. $2,500. It was more money than I had spent on anything in years besides house repairs and my truck. But when I pictured Clara's face from the night before, her anger, her certainty that I was the enemy, I felt something harden inside my chest. I would pay far more than that to protect her. Done, I said. Marcus raised an eyebrow slightly. You don't want to think about it? No, I said firmly. I want you to start today. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. All right. He reached into a drawer, pulled out a printed contract, and slid it across the desk. I'll need some details first, he said. Full name, vehicle information, home address, workplace, known associates. I began listing everything I knew. Arthur Beaumont, 37 years old. Marcus wrote quickly. He drives a silver Audi Q5. I continued. I memorized the license plate years ago. Good. I gave him the address of Clara's home in Highlands Ranch, along with the location of Arthur's real estate office downtown. Then I added the only other piece of information I had. There's a woman named Amber, I said. I don't know her last name, but she works at the same Coldwell Banker office. Marcus paused. What else do you know about her? Not much, I admitted. Linda said she had dark hair. Maybe around 30 years old. She was wearing a diamond bracelet and a designer coat. That's enough to start with, Marcus said. He closed his notebook. One more question before we move forward. I waited. If I uncover something, he said calmly, you need to understand what that means. What do you mean you're going to see things you wish you hadn't? He replied. Photos, videos, proof that may confirm your worst suspicions. He met my eyes directly. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Clara again. Her unwavering trust in Arthur. Her belief that I was the one destroying her life. Yes, I said quietly. Marcus stood and extended his hand once more. Then we have an agreement. I shook his hand. I'll begin surveillance this afternoon, he said. You'll receive daily updates, texts, or emails. If anything significant happens, I'll call you immediately. Thank you. Marcus gave a small shrug. Let's see what we find first. I left the office a few minutes later and walked back to my truck. The sky above Denver had turned dark gray, heavy with the threat of rain. I sat behind the wheel for a moment, looking down at the contract resting on the passenger seat. A week ago, the idea of hiring a private investigator to follow my own son-in-law would have sounded ridiculous. Now it felt like the only path left. I started the engine and pulled into traffic. My phone rested beside me on the seat. Silent. Waiting. Just like I was. Waiting for Marcus Reeves to uncover the truth. The first report arrived Monday afternoon. I was sitting at my kitchen table with a mug of coffee that had gone cold long ago when my phone buzzed against the wood. The screen lit up with a text from an unfamiliar number. "This is Marcus. First update attached. Call if you have questions." My hands trembled slightly as I opened the message. 3 photos were attached. The first image showed Arthur's silver Audi parked in the lot of Cherry Creek Shopping Center. The timestamp in the corner read 12:47 p.m., barely 3 hours after I had walked out of Marcus's office that morning. The second photo made my stomach tighten. Arthur was standing beside the car, with his arm wrapped around a young woman's waist. She was laughing, her head tipped back, as sunlight caught the strands of her long, dark hair. Arthur looked down at her with a soft, affectionate expression. It was the exact same look I had seen him give Clara countless times. The third photo showed them kissing. I stared at the screen until my eyes began to burn. My fingers slowly lowered the phone onto the table while I pressed both palms against the wood, trying to steady the shaking in my hands. There it was. Proof. Clear, undeniable proof that Linda had been telling the truth. I picked up the phone again and called Marcus. "Did you see the photos?" he asked immediately. "Yes," I said quietly. My voice sounded hollow to my own ears. "That's her. That's the woman Linda saw." Marcus paused briefly. "Her name is Amber Wright," he said. 30 years old, real estate agent at Coldwell Banker, the same office as Arthur. I closed my eyes. "I spoke with a couple people who know her," he continued. "From what they told me, Arthur and Amber have been seeing each other for over a year. A year. Clara and Arthur had been married for 4 years. That meant for at least a quarter of their marriage, he had been lying to her. "I'll keep following him," Marcus added. "If there's more, I'll find it." "Thank you," I said quietly. When the call ended, I sat alone in my kitchen, staring at the photographs on my phone. The floor beneath my life suddenly felt unstable. Tuesday's report arrived at 2 in the afternoon. This time, Marcus had sent a short video. I opened it. The footage showed Arthur and Amber sitting together inside Capitol Grill, the upscale steakhouse downtown. They were seated at a corner table beneath dim lighting, a candle flickering softly between them. Amber leaned forward across the table and took Arthur's hand. He lifted her fingers gently and kissed her knuckles. The video lasted barely 15 seconds, but it felt much longer. Marcus included a short message with the clip. Dinner tab $287. He paid with Visa ending in 4829. Card registered to Arthur, but linked to joint account with Clara. Clara's money. He was using Clara's money to take another woman out to dinner. I didn't call Marcus after that. Instead, I sat on my couch, replaying the video again and again until I couldn't stand to watch it anymore. Wednesday brought a new set of photos. This time, they were taken inside Trice Jewelers, a luxury jewelry store in Centennial. Amber stood at the display counter, holding a diamond necklace against her neck, while looking at her reflection in a mirror. The stones glittered brightly under the store's lights. Arthur stood beside her, smiling approvingly. The sales associate carefully returned the necklace to its case after she tried it on. Marcus's text explained the rest. Pendant necklace. Total weight 1.5 carats. Price $3,847. He didn't buy it during that visit. Salesperson confirmed he returned the next morning and purchased it. Paid in full. Same Visa card. $3,847. For a woman who was not his wife. The realization made my stomach twist. Thursday's report included another video. Arthur and Amber were leaving Trice Jewelers together. Arthur carried a small silver shopping bag with the store's logo printed on it. When they reached the parking lot, he stopped walking. He opened the bag and pulled out the necklace. Amber turned toward him, smiling. Arthur stepped closer and fastened the diamond necklace around her neck himself. Amber threw her arms around him and kissed him right there beside the car. Marcus's text message arrived seconds later. Confirmed spending so far: jewelry $3,847. Restaurants 3 dinners $780. Shopping trips. Cherry Creek times 2 approximately $1,200. Financial review suggests similar spending patterns for at least 8 weeks. Conservative estimate: $11,000 spent on Amber within 2 months. $11,000. And that was only the money Marcus had managed to document. I sat at my kitchen table again, staring at the numbers, while my mind ran through calculations I didn't want to make. Clara had given Arthur $25,000, money she believed was going toward medical care for his mother. If $11,000 had gone to Amber, where had the rest gone? I typed a message to Marcus. What about his mother? Can you locate her? The reply arrived 10 minutes later. Already working on it. Should have an answer tomorrow. Friday morning, my phone rang. Marcus, I found her, he said. His mother, yes. Edith Marshall, 77 years old. Where is she? Pinewood Care Center in Aurora. Marcus said. Basic assisted living facility. Nothing fancy. My grip tightened on the phone. Does she receive medical treatment there? I called the front desk, pretending to be a family friend, Marcus said. They confirmed she's been living there about 6 months. And the medical bills, Marcus sighed. There aren't any major ones. I felt the blood drain from my face. What do you mean? She pays rent using her Social Security checks, Marcus explained. Standard assisted living care. No expensive treatments. No special medical procedures. My voice barely worked. So, the money Clara sent Arthur did not go to his mother. I leaned against the kitchen counter and closed my eyes. Jesus. Marcus's voice grew more serious. Harold, I've seen a lot of cases like this. This isn't just cheating. What do you mean this is financial fraud? He said plainly. He took $25,000 from your daughter under false pretenses. Then he used that money to fund his lifestyle and his relationship with another woman. That's a crime. I know, I said quietly. There was a short silence. What do you want to do now? Marcus asked. I opened my eyes. The kitchen table was covered with printed photos, receipts, and notes Marcus had already sent me. Images of Arthur and Amber laughing, holding hands, kissing, and that diamond necklace. All of it paid for while Clara worked 12-hour hospital shifts. I want everything I said. Everything, every photo, every receipt, every detail you can find. Marcus didn't interrupt. I'm going to show Clara the truth, I continued. And when I do, she won't be able to ignore it. I'll send you the full report this afternoon, Marcus said. Then he added quietly, but there's something else you should do. What, go see Arthur's mother? Edith, yes. Talk to her yourself. I frowned. Why, if Clara refuses to believe the photos, Marcus said she might believe the truth coming directly from Edith. That made sense. I'll do it, I said. Good luck, Marcus replied. Then the call ended. I stood alone in my kitchen, staring down at my phone. $25,000. Gone. And Clara still had no idea. At exactly 1 o'clock, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Marcus. Final report sent to your email. Pinewood Care Center, address 2847 Peoria Street, Aurora, CO. Visiting hours 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., room 14. I stared at the address for a long time. Then I reached for my keys. It was time to meet Edith Marshall. Early Saturday morning, I drove out to Aurora. The address Marcus had given me led to Pinewood Care Center, a low brick building tucked along a quiet street lined with bare winter trees. The place looked like it had been built decades ago and never truly updated. The parking lot was half empty, the asphalt cracked in long gray lines that spidered across the ground. Near the entrance stood a faded metal sign. Visiting hours 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. daily. I parked the truck and sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel while staring at the building. This was where Arthur's mother lived. The woman Clara believed she had helped with $25,000. The thought made my stomach twist. I reached over to the passenger seat and picked up the small grocery bag I had brought with me. Inside were a few simple things, some oranges, a sleeve of crackers, and a bar of chocolate. Nothing expensive, just small comforts. Then I stepped out of the truck and walked inside. The lobby smelled faintly of disinfectant, mixed with overcooked vegetables from somewhere deeper in the building. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. A tired-looking receptionist sat behind a desk near the entrance, flipping through a magazine. She barely looked up when I approached. "I'm here to see Edith Marshall," I said. "Room 14. She nodded toward the hallway without much interest. "Down that corridor. Second door on the left." "Thank you." I walked down the narrow hallway, my footsteps echoing softly on the tile floor. The lights buzzed overhead as I counted the doors. 10, 12, 14. I stopped and knocked gently. A frail voice called out from inside. "Come in." I opened the door slowly. The room was small, no more than 10 or 12 feet across. A narrow bed sat against the wall, covered by a faded floral blanket that had clearly seen many years of use. A small wooden dresser stood nearby with 2 framed photographs on top. A tiny television rested on a rolling stand in the corner. The window looked out over the parking lot, but the blinds were half drawn, letting in only a dull strip of gray morning light. Sitting beside the window in a worn armchair was Edith Marshall. She looked smaller than I expected. Maybe 5 feet tall, if that. Her frame was thin and fragile, barely more than bones beneath the oversized cardigan draped around her shoulders. Her white hair was pulled back into a loose bun, and her hands resting on the arms of the chair were twisted with arthritis. "Mrs. Marshall," I said gently. She looked up slowly, her pale blue eyes cautious. "Yes, my name is Harold Whitman," I said. "I'm Clara's father, Arthur's father-in-law." Her expression changed immediately. First surprise, then relief. "Oh my goodness," she said softly. "Clara's father. Please. Please sit down." She gestured toward the edge of the bed. I set the grocery bag carefully on top of the dresser before sitting. "I brought you a few things," I said. She looked toward the bag and smiled faintly. "That's very kind of you. I don't get many visitors." "Arthur doesn't come by?" I asked carefully. The smile faded. "No," she said quietly. "He calls sometimes, maybe once a month. But he hasn't visited in 6 months. Maybe longer, 6 months." The number settled heavily in my chest. "What about Clara?" I asked. Edith shook her head gently. "No, but she tries to call. She's such a sweet girl." Her voice softened. "Always asking how I'm doing." She paused. "But Arthur told me not to answer when she calls." I frowned. "He told you not to answer?" "Yes," she said sadly. "He said it would upset her to see how I'm really living. That it's better if she doesn't know." My stomach tightened. Arthur hadn't just lied to Clara. He had deliberately kept her away from his mother. "Mrs. Marshall," I said carefully. "Clara sent Arthur $25,000. Her eyes widened. "For you. She believed it was for your medical care. Treatments, medications, making sure you were comfortable." Edith stared at me in disbelief. $25,000. She slowly shook her head. I've never seen that money, she said quietly. My chest tightened. I pay my rent here with my Social Security checks, she continued. $1,200 a month. That's all I have. She looked around the room apologetically. The staff are kind, but this place isn't expensive, and I'm not receiving any special medical care, just my regular prescriptions for blood pressure and arthritis. I felt like someone had driven a fist straight into my stomach. He told Clara you were seriously ill, I said quietly, that you needed treatment. Edith's eyes filled with tears. I'm not sick, she whispered. I'm just old. Her voice broke slightly, and lonely. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I looked around the small room again. The thin blanket, the old television, the window where cold air slipped through the edges of the frame. Mrs. Marshall, I asked softly, do you have a winter coat? She blinked. I have one, she said, but it's very old. The zipper broke last winter. I nodded slowly. Arthur promised to buy you a new one, didn't he? Her eyes widened. How did you know? Just a guess. She wiped at her eyes. He said he'd bring me a navy blue one, she said quietly, a warm one. Her voice softened with embarrassment. But he never came. I clenched my jaw. Arthur had promised his elderly mother a winter coat, but instead he had spent thousands on jewelry for another woman. I'm going to buy you that coat, I said firmly. She looked up in surprise. A navy blue one, just like he promised. Her expression brightened with cautious hope. You will, yes. I stood. And I'm going to bring Clara here soon, so she can see you herself. Edith's eyes filled with tears again. You'd really do that, I promise. She reached out and gently took my hand. Her grip was weak but warm. Thank you, Harold, she said softly. You're a good man. Clara is lucky to have you. I squeezed her hand gently before letting go. Then I quietly left the room. A few minutes later, I was sitting back inside my truck in the parking lot, staring at the building through the windshield. The image of Edith's small room refused to leave my mind. The thin blanket, the broken zipper on her coat, the loneliness in her voice. $25,000. Clara had given Arthur $25,000. Marcus had already documented $11,000 spent on Amber Jewelry Dinner's shopping trips. That meant $14,000 remained unaccounted for. $14,000 that had never gone toward Edith's care. Never went toward medical bills. Never bought the coat Arthur had promised his mother. So where had it gone? I pulled out my phone and called Marcus. I just visited his mother, I said when he answered. And she's living in a tiny room with barely any heat, I said, paying rent with Social Security. She hasn't received a single dollar of the money Clara sent. Marcus was silent for a moment. So Arthur lied about everything he said finally. Yes. What's your next move? I looked up toward the building again, toward the window where Edith's room was. I thought about Clara working endless hospital shifts, trusting her husband, believing his lies. Then I thought about Arthur, kissing Amber in parking lots, fastening diamond necklaces around her neck, spending money that was never his. I'm going to find out where the rest of that money went, I said quietly. And then I'm going to show Clara everything, every photo, every receipt, every lie. Marcus exhaled slowly. All right, I'll keep digging. The call ended. I started the truck's engine. $14,000 was still missing. Arthur had betrayed his wife, abandoned his mother, lied to everyone around him, and I was going to make sure he answered for every single one of those lies. I was still sitting in my truck outside Pinewood Care Center when my phone buzzed again around 3 o'clock Saturday afternoon. I had been staring at the brick building for nearly 20 minutes, replaying my conversation with Edith Marshall in my mind, when the notification appeared. An email from Marcus. The subject line made my chest tighten immediately. Urgent. Found something big. I opened it. Marcus's message was short and direct. Harold, the eye dug deeper into Arthur's credit card activity from the last 2 months. I found something you need to see. From November 3rd through November 7th. Arthur told Clara he was attending a real estate conference in San Diego. That wasn't true. He booked a room at the St. Regis Aspen Resort in Colorado. 4 nights. Total charge $1,350. Same Visa card ending in 4829. Amber Wright posted photos from Aspen during those exact dates. She deleted them within 24 hours, but I captured screenshots before they disappeared. I've attached everything. Call me. My hands began to shake as I opened the attachments. The first file was a screenshot from Amber's social media account. She stood on a snow-covered balcony overlooking the mountains, wearing a fur-trimmed coat and holding a glass of champagne. The sunlight glinted off the snow behind her. Her smile looked carefree, almost triumphant. The caption read, "Living my best life." The location tag below it read, St. Regis Aspen Resort. The date, November 4th, 2024. I opened the next attachment. It was a hotel receipt. Street, Regis Aspen Resort. Guest name Arthur Beaumont. Check-in, November 3rd. Check-out, November 7th. Room, rate $337.50 per night. Total $1,350. Payment method Visa, ending in 4829. The same credit card Arthur had used to buy Amber the diamond necklace. The same credit card connected to the joint account he shared with Clara. I kept scrolling through Marcus's report. He had already calculated the estimated cost of the trip. Hotel $1,350, meals approximately $400, ski lift passes $200, miscellaneous expenses roughly $100, estimated total $2,050. $2,000 for a romantic getaway in Aspen. I leaned back in my seat and stared at the numbers. Marcus had already documented the $3,847 diamond necklace from Trice Jewelers, add the $780 from restaurant dinners, and another $1,200 from shopping trips at Cherry Creek. Altogether, Arthur had spent more than $7,000 on Amber in just 1 month. $7,000. While Clara worked 12-hour shifts at the hospital and sent him $25,000 to help care for his supposedly dying mother. I called Marcus immediately. "Did you get the report?" he asked. "Yes," I said quietly. My voice sounded rough. "San Diego," I continued. "He told Clara he was going to San Diego." "I checked that too," Marcus replied. "There was no real estate conference in San Diego during those dates. He completely fabricated it." I closed my eyes and leaned my head against the seat. "How did you get those social media photos if she deleted them?" I asked. "I run software that archives public posts before they disappear," Marcus said. "It's pretty standard in investigations like this." "How long were they online?" "About 18 hours, he replied. "My guess is she realized broadcasting a secret vacation wasn't the smartest move and deleted everything, but by that point I had already saved it." I nodded even though he couldn't see me. "Is there anything else?" I asked. "There's one more detail," Marcus said. I waited. I found another post Amber made from a restaurant in Aspen, high-end place called Matsuhisa. "What about it?" I contacted the restaurant pretending to track down a receipt for tax documentation, Marcus explained. They confirmed a reservation under Arthur Beaumont. November 5th, 7 p.m. Table for 2. How much was the bill? $340. For one dinner. I rubbed my forehead. Harold Marcus said carefully, "You need to understand something. This isn't just an affair anymore." I stayed silent. "Arthur is living a double life," Marcus continued. "He's using your daughter's money to finance a relationship with another woman. Expensive trips, luxury dinners, jewelry." His voice hardened slightly. "Meanwhile, his mother is sitting in a care facility with a broken coat zipper." "I know," I said quietly. "So what's your next move?" I opened my eyes and stared through the windshield at Pinewood Care Center. "I need to talk to Clara." Marcus paused. "You sure that's a good idea?" "I'm not going to accuse her of anything," I said. "I just want to confirm the timeline." "What timeline?" "If Clara tells me Arthur really went to San Diego during those dates," I said, "then I'll know he's been lying straight to her face." Marcus sighed softly. "Just be careful," he said. "If she's still in denial, she might warn him that someone's investigating." "I'll be careful." We ended the call. For several minutes, I sat in silence, staring at the email on my phone, while trying to figure out how to approach the conversation. Finally, I dialed Clara's number. She answered on the third ring. "Dad." Her voice sounded cautious, guarded. We hadn't spoken since she threw me out of her house the previous Sunday night. "Hi, sweetheart," I said gently. "I know you asked for space, and I'm respecting that. I just wanted to check in and see how you're doing." There was a pause. "I'm fine," she said. "That's good." I hesitated before continuing. "I was thinking about Arthur's job. He mentioned he travels sometimes for showings and conferences." "Does he go out of town often?" "Sometimes," she said. "Why no reason?" I replied lightly. "Just curious." "Has he taken any trips recently?" Another pause. "Yes," Clara said. "He went to San Diego a couple weeks ago. A real estate conference." My chest tightened. "Early November?" I asked. "Yes. November 3rd through the 7th. The exact dates Marcus had given me." "Why are you asking?" she said. "Just making conversation," I said quickly. "How was it? Did he enjoy the conference, I think?" "So," she replied. "He said it was exhausting. Lots of networking, late meetings." Networking, meetings, while he was skiing in Aspen with Amber. "That sounds tiring," I said quietly. "I'm glad he's working hard." "Dad," Clara said suddenly, "why are you really calling?" I swallowed. "I just miss you," I said honestly. "I hate the way we left things." Her voice softened slightly. "I miss you too." Then she added quietly, "But I meant what I said. I need you to trust me and my marriage." "I'm trying," I said. We spoke for a few more minutes after that. Careful conversation, neutral topics, the distance between us still obvious. Finally, she said she had to go. "I love you," I told her. There was a small hesitation. Then she said it back. When the call ended, I looked down at Marcus's email again. Clara had just confirmed everything. Arthur had told her he was in San Diego from November 3rd to 7th, but he wasn't. He had been in Aspen, with Amber, spending more than $2,000 of Clara's money. I sat there in the parking lot, staring at the photos on my screen. Amber laughing on a balcony with a glass of champagne. Arthur's name printed on the hotel receipt. The restaurant bill. The ski passes. My daughter was working herself to exhaustion, trusting her husband completely. And he was lying to her face, over and over again. In that moment, I realized something painful but unavoidable. Clara would never believe me if I simply told her the truth. She had already chosen Arthur's word over mine once. She had thrown me out of her house for suggesting he was unfaithful. But proof was different. Photos, receipts, a paper trail she couldn't argue with, and what I had so far wasn't enough. Not yet. I needed more. I needed everything. Monday afternoon at 2 o'clock, I walked into the Coldwell Banker office on Grant Street in downtown Denver. The building was modern, all glass and polished steel, with the company logo gleaming above the entrance. I'd driven past it 100 times, but never been inside. Now, standing in the marble lobby, I felt like I was stepping into enemy territory. I took the elevator to the 3rd floor and pushed through the glass doors into the real estate office. The space was open and bright, with rows of desks separated by low partitions. Framed photos of expensive homes lined the walls. A handful of agents sat at their computers talking on phones or typing away. At the front desk sat a young woman with blonde hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. Her name tag read, Jessica. I approached with what I hoped was a friendly smile. "Good afternoon. I'm looking for Arthur Beaumont. Is he available?" Jessica looked up and smiled back. "Oh, Arthur, he's out to lunch right now. He should be back in about 30 minutes. Are you here for a showing?" "Actually, I was hoping to discuss listing my house. A friend recommended Arthur." "That's great. He's one of our top agents." She glanced at her computer screen. "Let me check his schedule. Can I get your name, Harold Whitman?" As she typed, she said casually, "Arthur just left about 20 minutes ago. He went to lunch with Amber, his girlfriend. They usually go to that Italian place down the street on Mondays." I froze. His girlfriend. I kept my voice steady. "Yeah, Amber, right. She works here too. She's one of our newer agents. They've been together for like over a year now. Super cute couple." Jessica smiled, oblivious to the bomb she'd just dropped. My heart was pounding, but I forced myself to stay calm. "I didn't know Arthur had a girlfriend. That's nice." "Oh yeah, they're pretty serious. She's really sweet. Let me see if I can get you on his calendar for later this week." "Excuse me." A man's voice interrupted. I turned to see a guy in his 40s walking over wearing a dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He extended his hand. "I'm Tom Mitchell, one of the senior agents here." I couldn't help overhearing. "You're looking to list a property?" I shook his hand. "Harold Whitman." "Yes, potentially." "Great. Arthur's excellent, but if you'd like, I can help you while you wait. Want to grab a coffee in the break room?" "Sure." I followed Tom to a small break room in the back, a kitchenette with a coffee maker, a table, and a few chairs. He poured 2 cups and handed me one. "So," Tom said, sitting down, "you're a friend of Arthur's." "Actually, I'm his father-in-law." Tom blinked. "Father-in-law?" "Yeah, he's married to my daughter Clara." Tom's face went completely blank. He stared at me like I'd just spoken a foreign language. "Married?" "Yes. 4 years now." Tom set his coffee down slowly. "I'm sorry, are we talking about the same Arthur Beaumont tall guy, dark hair, drives a silver Audi?" "That's him." "Arthur's married?" Tom's voice rose slightly. "Are you sure?" "Positive. I was at the wedding." Tom leaned back in his chair, rubbing his face. Jesus Christ. I've worked with Arthur for 3 years. I've never heard him mention a wife. Not once. My chest tightened. Never. Never. He talks about Amber all the time, where they went for dinner trips, they're planning gifts he's buying her. The whole office knows they're together, but a wife. Tom shook his head. He's never said a word. What about social events, office parties? Does he bring anyone? He brings Amber every time. Last year's Christmas party, the summer picnic, happy hours. It's always Amber. Tom looked genuinely disturbed now. "Harold, I'm being straight with you. Everyone here thinks Arthur's single. Well, not single anymore because of Amber, but definitely not married. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. So he's been pretending Clara doesn't exist. I guess so. I mean, damn. I had no idea. Tom paused. Does your daughter know about Amber? She knows Amber's name. Arthur told her Amber's a colleague, nothing more. Tom let out a long breath. Man, that's messed up. I'm really sorry. I wouldn't have said anything if I'd known. No. I cut him off. I'm glad you did. I needed to hear it. We sat in silence for a moment. From the main office, I could hear phones ringing, people talking, the hum of daily business. Normal sounds. But nothing about this felt normal. How long did you say they've been together? I asked. Arthur and Amber. Over a year at least. Maybe longer. They started getting close around last summer, I think. July or August. By fall, it was pretty obvious they were a couple. Over a year. My mind raced doing the math. Clara and Arthur had their 3rd wedding anniversary last June, which meant he'd started seeing Amber barely a month later. Does Amber know he's married? I asked. Tom shrugged. I have no idea. If she does, she's never mentioned it either. I stood up my coffee untouched. Thank you for your honesty, Tom. Yeah, of course. He stood too, looking uncomfortable. Listen, are you going to talk to Arthur about this? Eventually. Do me a favor, don't tell him I said anything. I don't need the drama at work. I won't. Tom walked me back to the lobby. Jessica looked up as we passed, still cheerful and oblivious. Did you want to schedule something with Arthur, Mr. Whitman? Not today, I said. I'll call him. I walked out of the office and down to the parking garage, my footsteps echoing in the concrete stairwell. When I reached my truck, I sat behind the wheel and gripped it hard, trying to steady my breathing. Arthur had erased Clara from his life. At work, he was single, dating Amber, taking her to office parties, introducing her to colleagues, building a whole separate world where his wife didn't exist. And everyone believed him. Jessica thought Amber was his girlfriend. Tom had worked with him for 3 years and never heard Clara's name. The entire office saw him as one half of a happy couple, just not the couple he'd actually married. My daughter had been deleted. I started the engine and pulled out of the garage onto Grant Street, heading home. But I wasn't going home to rest. I was going home to call Marcus, because now I had everything I needed. Tuesday morning, I drove back to Marcus's office. When I walked in, he was already waiting, a thick manila folder sitting on his desk. He gestured to the chair across from him. This is everything, he said, tapping the folder. Every photo, every receipt, every detail I could find. It's all here. I sat down and he slid the folder across the desk. I opened it. The first page was a timeline, dates, locations, events, all laid out in neat columns. November 3rd to 7th, Aspen trip with Amber Wright. November 10th, jewelry purchase at Trice Jewelers, $3,847. November 12th, dinner at Capitol Grill, $287. On and on, a chronicle of betrayal spelled out in black and white. Behind the timeline were the photos, more than 50 of them. Arthur and Amber at Cherry Creek Shopping Center holding hands in the parking lot. Arthur fastening the diamond necklace around her neck. The two of them at a candlelit table at Capitol Grill. Amber on the balcony and Aspen champagne in hand. Then came the receipts, hotel bills, restaurant tabs, credit card statements showing charges to the Visa, ending in 4829, the joint account Arthur shared with Clara. I dug deeper into Amber Wright, Marcus said. 30 years old. She and Arthur dated about 6 years ago before he met your daughter. They broke up. He moved on, married Clara. Then a year and a half ago, Amber got hired at Coldwell Banker. They reconnected, and started the affair. Yeah. From what I can tell, Amber thinks Arthur's getting divorced. She's been posting on social media about new beginnings and fresh starts. I don't think she knows he's still living with his wife. I closed my eyes for a moment. Even Amber was being lied to. How much has he spent on her? I asked. Marcus pulled out a spreadsheet. Based on what I can document, Trice Jewelers necklace, $3,847. Aspen trip, approximately $2,050. 3 dinners at high-end restaurants, $780. Shopping trips at Cherry Creek, estimated $1,200. Flowers, wine gifts, another $600 or so. Total confirmed spending, just over $11,000. In 2 months. In 2 months? Marcus confirmed. And that's just what I could track. There's probably more. I stared at the numbers. $11,000 of Clara's money spent on another woman, and that left $14,000 from the original $25,000 still unaccounted for. What about the rest of the money? I asked. Marcus shook his head. I can't trace it. It's possible he moved it to a separate account I don't have access to, or spent it on things that don't leave a paper trail. Cash withdrawals, maybe. Or he's saving it. Either way, it didn't go to his mother. I thought about Edith sitting in that cold room with her broken coat zipper, living on $1,200 a month in Social Security, while her son stole from his wife. Harold. Marcus said, his voice serious. I need to warn you. When you confront Arthur with this, he's going to know he's been caught. And cornered people do unpredictable things. He might get angry. He might threaten you or Clara or both. Be prepared. I will. Do you have a plan? Yeah. I looked down at the folder. I'm going to organize all of this, put it into categories so Clara can see exactly what he's done. Then I'm going to call her and ask her to come over. I won't tell her what it's about. I'll just say I want to talk. Marcus nodded. She might not come. She was pretty clear about needing space. I know. That's why I'm going to use something she can't refuse. What's that? I hesitated, then said, my wife Sarah had a pearl necklace. It was her mother's, passed down through the family. When Sarah died, I kept it. I've been meaning to give it to Clara for years, but I was waiting for the right moment. She knows about it. She's asked about it before. And you're going to use it as bait? Yeah. The word tasted bitter. I'll tell her I want to give it to her, that it's time. She'll come. And when she does, I'll show her everything. Marcus leaned back in his chair. That might work. Just be ready for her reaction. Denial, anger, maybe even blaming you for digging into her marriage. It's not going to be easy. I know. He stood and extended his hand. Good luck, Harold. I hope she listens. I shook his hand, gathered the folder, and left. Back home, I spread everything out on my kitchen table. Photos, receipts, timelines, notes. I spent the rest of the day organizing it into 5 folders, each one labeled clearly. Folder 1, the office. Jessica's comments about Amber being Arthur's girlfriend. Tom's confirmation that no one at Coldwell Banker knew Arthur was married. A printout of the company directory showing both Arthur and Amber's names. Folder 2, the affair. Photos of Arthur and Amber together. Kissing in parking lots. Holding hands at restaurants. The diamond necklace. Folder 3, the Aspen trip. The hotel receipt from St. Regis Aspen Resort. Screenshots of Amber's social media posts. The restaurant bill from Matsuhisa. Proof that Arthur lied about going to San Diego. Folder 4, the money. A breakdown of the $11,000 Marcus had traced. The $25,000 Clara had sent Arthur. The math showing how much was missing. Folder 5, the mother. Photos I'd taken of Edith's room at Pinewood Care Center. Notes from my conversation with her. Proof that she'd received no money, no care, nothing. When I finished, I sat back and looked at the 5 folders lined up on my table. Then I went to my bedroom and opened the top drawer of my dresser. Beneath a stack of old t-shirts wrapped in a velvet cloth was Sarah's pearl necklace. I carried it back to the kitchen and set it beside the folders. The pearls gleamed softly in the afternoon light, delicate and beautiful. Sarah had worn it on our wedding day, on Clara's baptism, on every anniversary we'd celebrated together. Now I was going to use it as bait to lure my daughter into facing a truth she didn't want to see. I picked up my phone and stared at Clara's name in my contacts. Then I set the phone down. Not yet. I needed to be ready. I needed to make sure I could stay calm, stay strong, no matter how Clara reacted. I looked at the necklace, at the folders, at the evidence of my son-in-law's betrayal, and I knew that tomorrow I would make the call. Tomorrow Clara would have to face the truth. Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock, I sat at my kitchen table staring at my phone. The 5 folders were stacked neatly in front of me. Sarah's pearl necklace sat in its velvet case beside them. Everything was ready. I just had to make the call. I picked up the phone, took a deep breath, and dialed Clara's number. It rang 3 times. 4. I was starting to think she wouldn't answer when I heard her voice. "Dad!" She sounded guarded, tired, like she'd been expecting this call but dreading it. "Hi, sweetheart," I said, keeping my voice gentle. "I know you asked for space and I've been trying to respect that, but I need to talk to you." Silence on the other end. Then, about what? Not about Arthur. Not about anything that happened last week. I promise. I paused. "I want to apologize for how I handled things at dinner, for upsetting you. You were right, I should have trusted your judgment." More silence. I could hear her breathing, weighing my words. "Okay," she said finally. "Apology accepted. Is that all?" "No." I looked down at the pearl necklace. "I found something. Your mother's necklace. The pearl one." I heard her inhale sharply. "Mom's pearls." "Yeah. I've been looking for it for months. I knew it was somewhere in the house, but I couldn't remember where I'd put it after she..." I let the sentence trail off. "Anyway, I found it yesterday, in the back of my dresser." "Dad." Clara's voice softened, and I could hear the shift immediately. "You found it." "I did. And I want you to have it. Your mother always said it should be yours." Clara was quiet for a long moment. I knew what that necklace meant to her. She'd watched Sarah wear it on special occasions her whole life. At our anniversary dinners, at Clara's college graduation, at parent-teacher conferences when Clara was in elementary school and Sarah wanted to look her best. The last time Sarah wore it was at Clara's wedding. She'd insisted on it, said it was tradition that something borrowed. Something blue wasn't enough without something that connected 3 generations of women. "I thought it was lost," Clara said, and I could hear the emotion catching in her voice. "So did I. But it's here. It's safe. And it's yours. Can I come get it?" "Of course. But I'd like to do this properly. Come over for dinner. Saturday night, 7 o'clock. I'll make pot roast the way you like it with the carrots and those little red potatoes. We can talk, have a nice evening, and I'll give you the necklace. What do you say?" Another pause. I held my breath, waiting. "Just you and me?" she asked carefully. "Well, Arthur's welcome too if he wants to come. I don't want to exclude him. This is a family thing and he's family." The words tasted like ash in my mouth, but I forced them out. I heard muffled voices on the other end of the line, Clara covering the phone, talking to someone in the background. Arthur, almost certainly. I couldn't make out the exact words, but I could hear the tone. His voice was low, insistent. Hers was questioning, uncertain. The conversation lasted maybe 15 seconds. Then Clara came back on the line. "Arthur says he'd like to come," she said. "If that's really okay with you." "Perfect. Exactly what I needed. Of course it's okay," I said, injecting warmth into my voice. "I'd be happy to have him. 7 o'clock Saturday. I'll have everything ready." "Okay." Clara sounded relieved, maybe even a little hopeful. "Saturday at 7. We'll be there." "Thank you, sweetheart. I'm really looking forward to it. It's been too long since we've had a proper family dinner." "Me too, Dad, and thank you for finding the necklace, for wanting to give it to me. It means a lot." "I know it does," I said quietly. "Your mother would want you to have it. She always did." "I love you, Dad." The words hit me harder than I expected. "I love you too, sweetheart, more than you know." We said our goodbyes and I hung up. I sat there for a long moment, phone still in my hand, staring at the 5 folders on the table. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking slightly. Saturday, 7 o'clock. Clara and Arthur would walk through my door expecting a reconciliation dinner and a family heirloom. Instead, they'd get the truth. All of it. I set the phone down and picked up Sarah's pearl necklace. The pearls gleamed softly in the morning light, smooth and perfect. Sarah had worn this on our wedding day, on the day Clara was born, on every important occasion for 30 years, and now I was using it as bait to lure my daughter into the hardest conversation of her life. "I'm sorry, Sarah," I whispered to the empty kitchen, "but I have to do this. I have to save her." I placed the necklace carefully back in its velvet case and closed the lid. Then I looked at the 5 folders again. Each one contained a piece of Arthur's betrayal. Each one held proof that would shatter Clara's world. But it had to be done. Because Arthur was coming. He'd taken the bait just like I'd hoped. He probably thought this was his chance to smooth things over, to play the loving son-in-law, to prove to Clara once and for all that her father was the problem. He had no idea what was waiting for him. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the cold November morning. 3 more days, 72 hours until Saturday night. 3 more days to prepare myself for what I was about to do. I thought about Clara's voice on the phone, the way it had softened when I mentioned the necklace, the way she'd said, "I love you, Dad," before hanging up. In 3 days, she might never say those words to me again. But if it meant saving her from a man who was bleeding her dry, stealing from her, lying to her face every single day, then I'd accept that. I turned back to the table and looked one more time at the evidence of Arthur Beaumont's betrayal. The office folder, the affair folder, the Aspen folder, the money folder, the mother folder. 5 folders that would destroy a marriage. 5 folders that would break my daughter's heart. But 5 folders that told the truth. And the truth was all I had left to give her. I picked up my keys and headed to the grocery store. I had a pot roast to make. Saturday at 7 o'clock, Arthur Beaumont would walk into my house thinking he'd won. But by the end of the night, he'd know exactly what it felt like to lose everything. Because that's what he'd taken from my daughter. And I was going to make damn sure she got it back. I woke before dawn on Thursday morning. Sleep had been impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, the same image returned: Clara sitting across from me, her face changing as she opened those folders. First confusion, then disbelief. And finally, the moment when the truth would break through everything she believed about her husband. The thought twisted in my chest. But there was no turning back now. So I got out of bed, went to the kitchen, and made coffee. The quiet house felt heavier than usual, as if it knew what was coming. I stood at the counter holding the mug, staring out the window into the dark morning, trying to steady my thoughts. By 8 o'clock, I was at the grocery store. I moved slowly through the aisles, choosing everything I needed to make pot roast the way Sarah used to. A thick cut of beef chuck with good marbling, fresh carrots, small red potatoes, yellow onions. I added a bottle of red wine, not expensive, just something solid to deepen the flavor. Then I picked up fresh thyme and rosemary from the produce section. The routine felt almost comforting. Normal. At the checkout counter, the clerk smiled as she scanned the groceries. "Having company tonight?" she asked casually. "My daughter," I replied, "and her husband." "That sounds lovely," she said warmly. "I hope you have a wonderful dinner." I forced a polite smile. Wonderful wasn't the word I would have used. I paid for the groceries, loaded the bags into my truck, and drove home through the quiet morning traffic. The sky was pale and overcast, the kind of dull winter light that never quite brightens the day. Back home, I unpacked the groceries, carefully placing everything in its proper place. Then I began cleaning. If I was going to do this, the house needed to feel right. I vacuumed the living room, slowly pushing the machine across the carpet. I dusted the shelves along the walls and wiped down the coffee table where the folders would eventually sit. I straightened the pictures on the wall, old family photos of Clara growing up, snapshots of Sarah smiling in the backyard garden. Every small detail mattered. By the time noon arrived, the house looked better than it had in months. Almost as if Sarah were still there, quietly keeping everything in order the way she always had. That thought stayed with me. In the afternoon, I moved into the kitchen. I wiped down the counters, cleaned out the refrigerator, and checked the cabinets to make sure I had everything I needed. Then I opened the china cabinet. Sarah's good dishes were still there, white porcelain plates edged with delicate blue flowers. We had used them for holidays and special dinners, moments when we wanted the table to feel a little more meaningful. I took each piece out carefully and washed them by hand. When I finished, I lined them up on a towel to dry. By evening, the house felt different. Cleaner, calmer. But beneath that calm sat the truth, waiting inside 5 simple folders. I carried them to the kitchen table and spread them out. One by one, I opened them again. The photographs Marcus had taken, Arthur and Amber together, the restaurant receipts, the jewelry purchase, the timeline Marcus had created showing every lie Arthur had told. I read through everything, slowly making sure I understood every detail. Then I began rehearsing. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and practiced what I would say. "Clara, I know this is going to hurt. Arthur told you he was in San Diego. Here's proof he was in Aspen. I'm not trying to destroy your marriage. I'm trying to protect you." The words sounded strange when spoken aloud. Too formal, too controlled. But I knew the conversation itself would be anything but controlled. Clara would be angry, maybe furious. Still, I had to remain calm. For her. For the truth. I finally went to bed late Thursday night, but sleep remained shallow and restless. Friday morning arrived quickly. My phone rang just after 8. It was Marcus. "Just checking in," he said. "You still planning to go through with it tomorrow?" "Yes." There was a pause. "How are you holding up?" "I'm fine," I said. The lie came easily. Harold Marcus continued carefully. "I've seen a lot of confrontations like this. They don't always go the way people expect." "I understand." "She might defend him," he said. "She might turn her anger on you instead. That happens more often than you'd think." "I know. And Arthur might not react well either. If he feels cornered, things could escalate." I considered that. "Do you have anyone there with you?" Marcus asked. "No," I said. It has to be just the three of us. Marcus exhaled slowly. All right, but if things get heated, call the police. Don't try to handle it alone. I won't. Good luck tomorrow. Thanks. We ended the call. The rest of Friday morning, I spent cooking. I heated a heavy Dutch oven on the stove and browned the beef carefully until the outside developed a deep crust. The smell filled the kitchen immediately. Then I poured in the wine and broth, scraping the bottom of the pot to release the flavor. Next came the vegetables: carrots, potatoes, onions, for finally the herbs. I covered the pot and placed it into the oven, setting the temperature low, so it would cook slowly, just the way Sarah always did. Within an hour, the entire house smelled like home, like quiet Sundays and family dinners and safe conversations. That was exactly the feeling I wanted Clara to walk into, which made the guilt sting even more. By evening, everything was ready. At 6 o'clock, I carried the 5 folders into the living room. I opened the cabinet beneath the coffee table and slid them inside, hidden but within reach. Tomorrow, when the time came, all I would have to do was pull them out. At 6:45, I set the dining room table. Sarah's china, cloth napkins, candles placed carefully in the center. Finally, I opened the velvet box containing the pearl necklace. I placed it gently on a small blue cushion at the head of the table where Clara would sit. The pearls caught the candlelight beautifully. For a moment, I simply stood there looking at the table. It looked elegant, warm, inviting, like the beginning of a celebration, but I knew better. This dinner wasn't a celebration. It was the moment everything would change. I checked my watch. 6:55. They would be arriving soon. I walked into the living room and stood by the window watching the quiet street outside. The sun had already set, leaving the neighborhood wrapped in the dim glow of porch lights. Then headlights appeared at the corner. A silver Audi. My pulse quickened. The car turned into my driveway and came to a stop. The engine shut off. 2 doors opened. Clara stepped out first, wearing a dark blue dress beneath her coat. Arthur climbed out after her, adjusting his shirt sleeves. They looked relaxed, comfortable, like they were arriving for an ordinary family dinner. They had no idea what was waiting inside. I stepped away from the window and walked to the front door. 6:58. The doorbell rang. I closed my eyes for a moment, drew in a deep breath, and opened the door. At 7 o'clock, Clara and Arthur stepped into my house. Clara looked around, taking in the clean living room, the smell of pot roast wafting from the kitchen. She smiled, but it was tentative, guarded. The tension from our last conversation still hung between us. "Hi, Dad," she said again, softer this time. Come in," I said, stepping aside. "Let me take your coats." Arthur handed me his jacket, flashing that practiced smile of his. "Thanks for having us, Harold. How have you been, Hans? Good, I lied. Really good. Come on, dinner's just about ready." I led them into the dining room. Clara's eyes went immediately to the table, the candles, the good china, the pearl necklace sitting on its blue velvet cushion at her place setting. She gasped. "Dad, is that your mother's pearls?" I finished. "Go ahead, take a look." She walked over slowly, almost reverently, and picked up the necklace. The pearls gleamed in the candlelight. As she held them up, her eyes filling with tears. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "I can't believe you found it." "I told you I would." She looked at me, and for a moment the tension between us dissolved. "Thank you. You can put it on after dinner if you want. For now, let's eat." We sat down, Clara and Arthur on one side of the table, me across from them. I served the pot roast, spooning the tender beef and vegetables onto their plates. Steam rose from the food, and for a few minutes the only sound was the clink of silverware against china. "This is delicious, Dad." Clara said, breaking the silence. Your mother's recipe. I'm glad you like it. Arthur cut into his beef and nodded. Really good, Harold. You're a great cook. Thanks. The conversation was stilted polite, like we were all strangers trying to make small talk. I watched Arthur as he ate, the way he smiled at Clara, the way he touched her hand briefly when she passed him the salt. He looked relaxed, confident. He had no idea what was coming. So, Arthur said after a few minutes, leaning back slightly. I had a great week at work. Closed 2 deals, both of them big ones. Commission's looking good. Should be around $15,000 for the month. That's impressive, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Yeah, it's been a strong quarter. I'm actually thinking about upgrading my car, maybe trade in the Audi for something newer. Clara glanced at him. I thought we were saving for a down payment on a bigger house. We are, Arthur said smoothly. But we can do both. Business is good, honey. We can afford it. I said nothing, just took another bite of pot roast. $15,000. Another round of lies, another performance. Clara turned to me. Dad, can I see the necklace again after dinner? Of course, I said. I'll give it to you properly. In the living room with coffee. Your mother would have wanted it that way. She smiled, and I saw the little girl she used to be, the one who believed the best of everyone, who trusted without question. It broke my heart. We finished dinner in near silence. I cleared the plates, waved off Clara's offer to help, and brought out coffee on a tray. Then I gestured toward the living room. Let's sit in there. More comfortable. Clara and Arthur followed me in. She sat on the couch, and he sat beside her, his arm draped casually over the back of the cushions. I sat in the armchair across from them, the coffee table between us. I poured 3 cups of coffee, handed them out, and set the tray aside. So, Clara said, her voice eager, the necklace. In a minute, I said. First, there's something I need to talk to you both about. Her smile faltered. Dad, you said this wasn't about... It's not about our argument, I interrupted gently. It's something else. Something important. Arthur straightened slightly, his expression shifting. What's this about, Harold? I didn't answer. Instead, I reached down and opened the cabinet under the coffee table. I pulled out the 5 folders and set them on the table between us. Clara stared at them, her brow furrowing. The folders were labeled clearly in my handwriting office. Affair, Aspen, money, mother. Dad! Clara's voice was barely a whisper. What is this? Arthur's face had gone pale. His jaw tightened, and I saw his hand grip the armrest of the couch. These, I said quietly, looking at Clara, are things you need to see. Harold. Arthur said, his voice suddenly hard. What the hell are you doing? Showing my daughter the truth. Clara looked between us, confusion and fear flickering across her face. Truth. What truth? Dad, you promised this wasn't... I know what I promised, I said. But some things are more important than promises. Your safety, your future, your happiness. Dad, you're scaring me. I know, sweetheart. I'm sorry. I placed my hand on the first folder. But I need you to trust me. Just for a little while longer. Arthur leaned forward, his voice tight. Clara, we don't have to sit here and listen to this. Let's go. No, I said firmly. You're going to sit there, and you're going to let her see what I have to show her. Or what? Arthur's eyes flashed with anger. Or she'll wonder for the rest of her life why you were so desperate to leave. Clara looked at Arthur, then back at me. Her hands were trembling. Dad, what is this? I took a deep breath. and opened the first folder. Inside were printouts photos I'd taken of the Coldwell Banker office directory, showing both Arthur's and Amber's names. Notes from my conversation with Tom, a handwritten statement from Jessica the receptionist. I slid the first page across the table toward Clara. Last Monday, I said, my voice steady. I went to Arthur's office. I told the receptionist I was looking for him. She said he'd gone to lunch. I paused. With Amber, his girlfriend. Clara's eyes went wide. What? That's what she said. Arthur's out with Amber, his girlfriend. Those were her exact words. Arthur's face flushed red. She's confused. Amber's a colleague. The receptionist doesn't know what she's talking about. Then explain this. I pulled out another page, a printout of Jessica's note written in her bubbly handwriting. Arthur Beaumont plus Amber Wright equals office couple together 1+ year. Clara took the paper with shaking hands. Dad, this could be a mistake. It's not. I picked up my phone and played the recording I'd made of Tom. Tom's voice filled the room. Arthur's married. Are you sure? I've worked with him for 3 years. I've never heard him mention a wife. Not once. He talks about Amber all the time. The whole office knows they're together. Clara's hand went to her mouth. I talked to Tom Mitchell, I said. Senior agent at Coldwell Banker. He confirmed that everyone in the office thinks Arthur is single. Or rather dating Amber. They've been bringing her to office parties, company events, happy hours. For over a year. That's not, Arthur started. I'm not done. I cut him off. I opened the second folder. This one was full of photos. I spread them across the coffee table one by one. Arthur and Amber in the parking lot at Cherry Creek Shopping Center. His arm around her waist. Her leaning into him. Their lips pressed together in a kiss. Arthur and Amber at a candlelit table at Capitol Grill, holding hands across the table. Him kissing her knuckles. Arthur fastening a diamond necklace around Amber's neck in a jewelry store parking lot. Clara stared at the photos, her breathing shallow. No, this isn't. It is, I said quietly. These were taken over the past 2 weeks by a private investigator. Arthur shot to his feet. You hired someone to follow me. Yes. You had no right. I had every right. I looked at Clara. Sweetheart, I know this is hard, but there's more. I pulled out a receipt and placed it in front of her. Trice Jewelers. 1 diamond pendant necklace, 1.5 carats. Total $3,847. Payment method, Visa ending in 4829. That's the necklace in the photo, I said. The one he's putting on her. He bought it with your joint credit card. November 14th. Clara's hands were shaking so hard, the receipt fluttered. Arthur. He didn't answer. His jaw was clenched, his fists tight at his sides. I opened the third folder. To November 3rd through 7th, I said. Arthur told you he was going to San Diego for a real estate conference. Do you remember? Clara nodded slowly, tears starting to stream down her face. He didn't go to San Diego. I slid a hotel receipt across the table. He went to Aspen with Amber. The receipt showed it clearly, St. Regis Aspen Resort. Guest Arthur Beaumont. 4 nights. Total $1,350. Visa ending in 4829. Behind it was a screenshot from Amber's social media. Her standing on a snow-covered balcony with mountains in the background, champagne in hand, the location tag reading Street. Regis Aspen Resort. November 4th. There was no conference, I said. He lied to you. He took her on a romantic trip and paid for it with your money. Clara was crying openly now, staring at the receipt at the photo at Arthur. You said it was exhausting. You said you were tired from all the networking. Arthur's face had gone from red to pale. Clara, I can explain. Explain what? Her voice broke. Explain why you lied. Explain why you're in Aspen with another woman while I'm working double shifts at the hospital. It's not what it looks like. Stop. I opened the fourth folder. There's more. This one had a spreadsheet Marcus had prepared. A detailed breakdown of Arthur's spending over the past 2 months. Trice Jewelers, $3,847 Street. Regis Aspen Resort. $1,350 Matsuhisa Restaurant. Aspen, $340, Capitol Grill, $287, Cherry Creek Shopping, estimated $1,200. Flowers Gifts Miscellaneous, $600, total $11. $624, I pointed to the total. $11,624. That's what he spent on Amber in the past 2 months. All of it charged to the credit card linked to your joint account. Clara stared at the numbers, her face ashen. You gave Arthur $25,000, I continued. You thought it was for his mother's medical care, but he spent over $11,000 of it on his girlfriend. I looked at Arthur. Which brings me to my question. Where's the other $14,000? Arthur said nothing. His hands were shaking now too. I opened the fifth and final folder. Inside were photos I'd taken at Pinewood Care Center. Edith's small cold room, the worn furniture, the broken window latch, and a printed transcript of my conversation with her. Till last Saturday. I said, I went to see your mother-in-law, Edith Marshall. She's at Pinewood Care Center in Aurora. Clara looked up, her eyes red and swollen. How is she? Not good. I slid the photos toward her. She's living in a room that barely has heat. She pays her rent with Social Security $1,200 a month. That's all she has. But Arthur said the medical bills were so high. There are no medical bills, I said. Edith isn't getting any special treatment. No medications beyond basic prescriptions for blood pressure and arthritis. No extra care. Nothing. I played another recording on my phone, Edith's thin, trembling voice. Arthur hasn't sent me any money. He promised to buy me a winter coat, a navy blue one, but he never did. I haven't seen him in 6 months. Clara's face crumpled. She pressed her hands to her mouth, sobbing. He lied about his mother, I said. He lied about the money. He lied about the trip. He lied about Amber. He's been lying to you about everything, Clara. I looked at Arthur, who stood frozen, his face a mask of barely controlled rage and fear. So I'll ask you one more time, Arthur. Where's the other $14,000? Silence. Clara looked up at him, tears streaming down her face, her voice barely a whisper. Arthur. He didn't answer. She stood up slowly, the photos scattered on the coffee table between us. Dad. Her voice broke. Is all of this real? I looked at my daughter, my strong, beautiful daughter, who'd worked so hard, sacrificed so much, trusted so completely. And I nodded. Yes, sweetheart. It's all real. She turned to Arthur, waiting for him to deny it, to explain, to tell her I was lying. But he said nothing. And in that silence, her world shattered. If you're still following the story, type the number 7 in the comments. To let me know what you think so far. I'd really appreciate hearing your thoughts. Just a quick reminder, some elements in this story are dramatized for storytelling purposes. If this kind of story isn't for you, you're free to step away at any time. Wishing you good health and peace wherever you are. Now let's continue. For a long moment, nobody moved. Arthur stood frozen, his face cycling through emotions: shock, fear, anger. Clara sat on the couch, staring at the evidence scattered across the coffee table, her chest heaving with sobs she was trying to hold back. Then Arthur dropped to his knees in front of her. "Clara," he said, his voice urgent, pleading. "Baby, listen to me, please. This isn't what it looks like. I can explain everything." Clara didn't look at him. She just stared straight ahead, tears streaming down her face. "Your father, he's twisting everything, making it seem worse than it is. Amber is just a friend. Those photos are out of context. The trip to Aspen was a work thing. I swear." "Stop lying," I said quietly. Arthur's head snapped toward me, his eyes flashing with fury. "You stay out of this." "No." I stood up. "I won't, because there's one more thing you haven't explained." "What?" Arthur's voice was venomous now. "The private investigator found something else. A credit card debt, $15,000 in your name. High interest, maxed out. That's why you needed Clara's money, isn't it?" Arthur's face went white. Clara looked up at him, her voice barely a whisper. $15,000 in debt. It's not." Arthur stammered. "It is," I said. "You were drowning in debt. You needed cash. So you lied to Clara about your mother being sick, took $25,000, spent $11,000 on your girlfriend, and used the rest to pay off your credit cards." "That's not true." Arthur shouted, standing up. "You're making this up. You hired some hack to fabricate evidence because you never liked me. You've been trying to ruin my marriage from day one." "Then explain the photos," I said calmly. "Explain the hotel receipt. Explain why your co-workers think you're single. Explain why your mother hasn't seen you in 6 months." Arthur's hands clenched into fists. "You had no right to go to my office, no right to follow me, no right to talk to my mother. I had every right." My voice was steel now. "Because you're stealing from my daughter. She gave me that money willingly. Under false pretenses. That's called fraud." Arthur stepped toward me, his face twisted with rage. "You self-righteous old man. You think you're protecting her, you're destroying her life. No," I said, standing my ground. "You already did that." Clara stood up suddenly, her voice cutting through the tension. "Stop. Both of you, just stop." We both turned to look at her. She was shaking her arms wrapped around herself, like she was trying to hold herself together. "Arthur," she said, her voice trembling but clear. "Look at me." He turned to face her, his expression softening, trying to regain control. "Clara, sweetheart, Did you love me?" she asked. "When we got married? When you said your vows? Did you ever love me?" Arthur opened his mouth, closed it. For the first time all night, he seemed to be at a loss for words. "Answer her," I said quietly. Arthur's jaw tightened. He looked at Clara, at me, then back at Clara, and something in him snapped. "No," he shouted. "No, I didn't love you. Is that what you want to hear? I never loved you." Clara flinched like she'd been slapped. Arthur was unraveling now, words pouring out in a torrent of venom. "You want the truth? Fine, I needed money. I was buried in debt, credit cards, loans, everything. I needed someone stable, someone with a steady income who wouldn't ask too many questions. And you were perfect, Clara. So trusting, so naive. You believed every word I said." Clara's face was pale, her eyes wide with shock. "And your mother?" I asked, my voice cold. "What about her?" Arthur laughed, a bitter, ugly sound. That old woman, she's worthless. I don't owe her anything. She's lived her life. I'm not wasting my money keeping her comfortable in some overpriced nursing home." Clara let out a choked sob. "You're disgusting," I said. Arthur spun toward me. "And you're a meddling old fool who couldn't mind his own business." "How long?" Clara's voice was barely audible. "How long were you planning to keep doing this?" Arthur looked at her, and for a moment I thought he might show a shred of remorse. But instead he sneered. "As long as it took, another 6 months maybe, until I paid off my debts and saved enough to start fresh. Then I would have left. Clean break. You would have been fine." Clara's hand flew up and connected with his face, a sharp, resounding slap that echoed through the room. Arthur's head snapped to the side. He touched his cheek, stunned. Then his expression twisted into something cruel. "You think you're special," he hissed. "You think anyone else would want you. You're boring, Clara. You work all the time. You're exhausting to be around. I did you a favor by pretending to care." That was enough. I stepped between them, putting myself in front of Clara. "Get out." "What?" I said, "Get out of my house, now." Arthur's eyes narrowed. "You can't throw me out. Clara is my wife." "Not for long," I said. "By Monday morning, she'll have a lawyer. By the end of the month, she'll have divorce papers. And if you're smart, you'll sign them without a fight. Because if you don't, I'll make sure everyone knows what you did. Your office, your clients, everyone." Arthur's face flushed red. "You're bluffing." "Try me." For a moment, we stood there locked in a silent standoff. Then Arthur laughed cold hollow. "Fine," he said. "To keep her. She's not worth the trouble anyway." He grabbed his jacket from the chair and headed for the door. But before he left, he turned back and looked at Clara one last time. "Good luck, Clara," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. "You're going to need it." Then he walked out, slamming the door behind him. The house fell silent. Clara stood in the middle of the living room, staring at the closed door, her body trembling. Then her knees buckled. I caught her before she hit the floor and guided her back to the couch. She collapsed into the cushions, her face buried in her hands, and let out a wail that tore straight through my heart. I sat beside her and wrapped my arms around her, pulling her close. She sobbed into my shoulder, great shuddering sobs that shook her entire body. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart." She couldn't speak. She just cried, clinging to me like she was drowning. I held her tight, my own tears burning behind my eyes. On the coffee table, the pearl necklace sat untouched, gleaming softly in the lamplight, a symbol of love and family forgotten in the wreckage of a broken marriage. Clara didn't speak for 3 hours. After Arthur left, after the door slammed shut and the sound of his car faded down the street, she just sat on the couch in my living room. Silent. Still. Her eyes fixed on the pearl necklace lying on the coffee table beside the scattered evidence of her husband's betrayal. I didn't push her. I didn't ask if she was okay, because I knew she wasn't. Instead, I quietly gathered up the folders, the photos, the receipts, and put them back in the cabinet under the coffee table. Out of sight, but not forgotten. Then I went to the kitchen and made tea. It was something Sarah used to do whenever Clara was upset. Chamomile with a little honey. Sarah would say it couldn't fix the problem, but it could make the moment a little softer. I carried 2 mugs into the living room and set one on the table in front of Clara. She didn't reach for it. She just stared at the necklace, her hands folded tightly in her lap. I sat down in the armchair across from her and sipped my own tea, waiting. The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the silence. Outside, a car passed. A dog barked somewhere down the block. Normal sounds from a world that kept turning oblivious to the fact that my daughter's life had just shattered. Finally, at 10:15, Clara spoke. I believed him. Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. Every word. Every lie. I believed all of it. I know. How could I be so stupid? You're not stupid, I said firmly. You loved him. You trusted him. That's not stupidity. That's what marriage is supposed to be. She shook her head, tears welling up again. But I should have seen it. The signs were all there, the expensive things, the trips, the way he always had an excuse when I wanted to visit his mother. Her voice broke. How did I miss it? Because you didn't want to see it, I said gently. Because seeing it would mean facing something you weren't ready to face. She looked at me, then her eyes red and swollen. Did you know before tonight? Did you know all along that he didn't love me? No. I set my mug down. I had my doubts about Arthur. I thought he was too smooth, too polished. But I didn't know. Not until Linda told me she saw him with Amber. That's when I started looking. Clara was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I gave him $25,000. My entire savings. I know. And he spent it on her. On trips and jewelry and lies. Yes. She let out a choked laugh that turned into a sob. I worked so hard for that money, Dad. Double shifts. Extra hours. I was saving it for a down payment on a bigger house. Maybe a trip someday. And he just took it. I didn't have words for that. Nothing I could say would make it hurt less. Clara wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I don't want to go home, she whispered. I can't go back to that house. Not tonight. Then you'll stay here. She looked up, her expression fragile, almost childlike. Is that okay? Of course it's okay. This is your home too. It always will be. She nodded slowly, then stood up on shaky legs. I need to lie down. Your room's upstairs. Same as always. She started toward the stairs, then paused and looked back at me. Thank you, Dad. For everything tonight. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I love you, sweetheart. I love you too. She climbed the stairs slowly, like every step took effort. I listened to her footsteps move down the hall, heard the creak of her old bedroom door opening and closing. Then silence. I sat in the living room for a while longer, finishing my tea. The house felt heavy, like the weight of what had happened was pressing down on the walls. I thought about Arthur's face when he'd confessed, the venom in his voice when he'd said he never loved her, the cruelty in his words when he called his own mother worthless. I thought about Clara's face, the way it had crumpled when the truth finally hit her. And I wondered if I'd done the right thing, if showing her the truth had been an act of love or an act of destruction. At midnight, I turned off the lights downstairs and climbed the stairs to my own room. But as I passed Clara's door, I stopped. I could hear her crying, soft, muffled sobs that she was trying to keep quiet. The sound of someone trying to break apart silently, so no one else would have to carry the weight of her pain. I stood outside her door, my hand hovering over the doorknob. Part of me wanted to go in to sit beside her to tell her it would be okay. But I didn't, because some grief is too private, too raw to be witnessed. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is give someone space to fall apart. So I walked to the end of the hall and sat down on the floor, my back against the wall where I could still hear her, but where she wouldn't know I was there. And I stayed. I stayed while she cried. I stayed while the sobs turned to silence. I stayed while the house settled into the deep quiet of the early morning hours. At 2 o'clock, the crying finally stopped. I sat there a little longer, just to be sure, then quietly made my way to my own room. I didn't sleep. I just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the house, the creak of old floorboards, the hum of the refrigerator downstairs, the distant sound of a car passing on the street outside. And I thought about Sarah, about how much I missed her, about how much I wished she were here to help Clara through this. At 6:30 in the morning, I heard Clara's door open. I got up and went downstairs. She appeared a few minutes later, standing in the doorway of the kitchen. Her eyes were swollen and red, her hair messy, her face pale. She looked like she'd aged 10 years overnight. "Morning," I said softly. She didn't answer right away. She just stood there looking lost. "I called in sick to work," she said finally. I can't go in today." "That's okay. Can I stay here?" Her voice was small, tentative. "With you just for a little while?" I crossed the kitchen and pulled her into a hug. She buried her face in my shoulder, and I felt her body start to shake again. "You can stay as long as you need," I said. "As long as you want. This is your home, Clara. Always." She clung to me and we stood there in the kitchen, while the morning light crept through the windows. Outside, the world kept turning, but in that moment in my kitchen with my daughter in my arms, time felt like it had stopped. And for now, that was enough. December came with cold rain and gray skies. Clara had been living with me for 3 weeks, when I finally convinced her it was time to see a lawyer. On a Monday morning, I drove her to downtown Denver to meet David Richardson, a divorce attorney Marcus had recommended. His office was on 17th Street, all glass and steel. Richardson was in his 50s, gray-haired with a calm demeanor. He shook our hands and gestured to the chairs across from his desk. "Ms. Brooks," he said gently, "I'm very sorry you're going through this." Clara nodded, but didn't speak. I pulled out Marcus's report and slid it across the desk. He stole $25,000 from her under false pretenses. Spent it on his mistress. Richardson flipped through the pages, photos, receipts, witness statements. "This is thorough. Colorado is a no-fault divorce state, but this evidence will be useful if he contests anything. And given the fraud, you could file criminal charges if you wanted." Clara looked up sharply. "I just want him gone. I don't want to drag this out." Richardson nodded. "Understood. I'll draft the papers. We'll ask for the house half the joint account and reimbursement of at least part of the $25,000. If he doesn't contest, this could be done in 6 to 8 weeks. 2 days later, the papers were served. Arthur signed within 48 hours. No fight. No argument. He just signed and sent them back. Marcus called a week later. Arthur quit Coldwell Banker, left town. Word is he and Amber moved to Arizona. Phoenix, maybe. "Let him run," I said, "as long as he stays away from Clara." By mid-December, the financial picture became clear. The joint account had $8,000 left. Clara got all of it. The rest of the $25,000 was gone. Spent, withdrawn, vanished. Richardson tried to track it, but Arthur had moved money in ways that were hard to trace. "We could fight for more," Richardson told us. "But it would take months and cost thousands in legal fees. There's no guarantee we'd recover anything." Clara shook her head. "I don't want to fight anymore. I just want to be done." By Christmas, the divorce was final. Clara held the decree in her hands on a cold Saturday afternoon, staring at it like she couldn't believe it was real. "It's over," she whispered. "It's over," I confirmed. She looked up at me, her eyes empty. "Why don't I feel better?" In January, Clara made a decision. "I'm selling the house," she said one morning over breakfast. "Are you sure?" "Yes," I can't live there anymore. Every room reminds me of him. I need to start over. Where will you go? She looked at me hesitant. Could I stay here just for a while? Of course. Stay as long as you want. She sold the house in February. It went quickly, nice neighborhood, eager buyers. The sale netted her $85,000 after paying off the mortgage. It wasn't the life she'd planned, but it was something. Clara went back to work at St. Joseph Hospital in late December. Her co-workers welcomed her back with quiet kindness. No one asked questions. They just supported her. One of the nurses, Karen, pulled me aside when I came to pick Clara up after a shift. She's strong, Karen said. Stronger than she knows. She'll get through this. I know, I said, but it's hard to watch. It always is. That evening, Clara and I sat in my living room. She'd been quiet all day, staring out windows, picking at her dinner. Finally, she pulled the divorce decree out of her bag and held it up. I'm free, she said, her voice hollow. Legally, officially free. No more Arthur, no more lies, no more marriage. That's a good thing, I said carefully. Then why does it feel so empty? Her eyes filled with tears. I thought freedom would feel different. I thought I'd feel relieved or happy, but I just feel nothing. I moved to sit beside her on the couch. Because it's not just about being free from him. It's about losing the life you thought you had. The future you'd planned. That takes time to grieve. She leaned her head on my shoulder. How long, Dad? I don't know, sweetheart, but you'll get there. I promise. She held the decree, staring at the official seal, the signatures, the legal language that ended 4 years of her life. I'm free, she whispered again. But it sounded like a question. January came quietly, bringing with it a hesitant kind of hope. Clara had been living with me for 2 months, and slowly, so slowly, I almost didn't notice at first she was starting to heal. She laughed occasionally. She talked about work. She made plans for the future. And one morning over breakfast, she said something that surprised me. I want to see Edith. I looked up from my coffee. Arthur's mother. Yes. Clara set down her fork. I've been thinking about her. About what you told me. She's all alone in that place, and it's my fault. I sent Arthur money to take care of her, and he just abandoned her. That's not your fault. I know, but I still feel responsible. She deserves better. And Dad... Clara's eyes met mine. Arthur promised her a coat, a navy blue winter coat. I want to give it to her. So that Saturday, we went shopping. We drove to a department store in Lakewood, and Clara walked straight to the women's outerwear section. She found a beautiful navy blue coat wool blend, warm lining, simple and elegant. It cost $120. Perfect, she said, running her hand over the fabric. We bought other things too. A soft fleece blanket for $40, a warm scarf for $25, thick wool socks for $15. Clara paid for everything herself. I want to do this, she said when I tried to hand her my credit card. It matters to me. Sunday morning, we drove to Pinewood Care Center in Aurora. I parked in the same spot I'd used months ago, and together we walked inside carrying the bags of gifts. The receptionist barely looked up as we headed down the familiar hallway to room 14. I knocked gently. Mrs. Marshall, it's Harold Whitman. I've brought someone to see you. Come in, Edith's voice called. Clara took a deep breath and we stepped inside. Edith was sitting in her armchair by the window, just as she had been the last time I'd visited. But when she saw Clara, her face transformed. Clara, she whispered, is that really you? Clara crossed the room quickly and knelt down beside the chair. "Hi, Edith. I'm so sorry I haven't come to see you sooner." Edith reached out with trembling hands and touched Clara's face. "Oh, my dear girl, I've missed you so much." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "I missed you too. And I'm so sorry. I thought Arthur was taking care of you. I thought the money I sent was helping. I had no idea he was lying to me. I should have come to check on you myself. I should have—" "Stop," Edith said, gently cupping Clara's face. "This isn't your fault. None of it. Arthur is my son and I love him. But what he did, that was his choice, not yours." Clara let out a sob and buried her face in Edith's lap. The old woman stroked her hair, murmuring soft words of comfort. I stood by the door watching them, my chest tight. After a few minutes, Clara sat up and wiped her eyes. "I brought you something," she said, her voice thick with emotion. She pulled the navy blue coat out of the bag and held it up. Edith gasped. "Is that the coat Arthur promised you? I know it's late. I know it doesn't make up for everything. But I wanted you to have it." Edith's hands shook as she reached for it. Clara helped her stand, then gently draped the coat over her shoulders. It fit perfectly. "It's beautiful," Edith whispered, running her hands over the sleeves. "Thank you, Clara. There's more." Clara pulled out the blanket, the scarf, the socks, for when it gets cold. Edith's eyes filled with tears. "You didn't have to do this." "Yes, I did." They hugged again, and I saw something in Clara's face I hadn't seen in months. Peace. "Mrs. Marshall," I said, stepping forward, "there's one more thing. Next week we're moving you out of here." Edith blinked. "Moving me to a better facility. Sunrise Assisted Living, about 20 minutes from my house. It's warmer, cleaner, with better care. Clara and I are going to cover the cost." Edith looked between us, stunned. "I can't let you do that." "It's already done," Clara said firmly. "You deserve to be comfortable. You deserve to be taken care of, and we're going to make sure you are." Edith broke down, then sobbing into Clara's shoulder, thanking us over and over. 1 week later, I drove Edith to her new home. Sunrise Assisted Living was everything Pinewood wasn't: bright, clean, warm. Her room had a large window overlooking a garden, a comfortable bed, a small sitting area. The staff was friendly and attentive. When we settled Edith into her new room, she sat on the bed in her navy blue coat and looked around with wonder. "I never thought I'd have something like this," she said softly. Clara sat beside her and took her hand. "You deserve it. And we're going to visit you every week. I promise." As we left that afternoon, I looked back and saw Edith standing at her window, waving goodbye, a smile on her face. Clara waved back, and when we got to the car, she turned to me. Thank you, Dad, for showing me what needed to be done." "You're the one who did it," I said. She shook her head. "We did it together." We drove home in comfortable silence, and for the first time since that terrible night in November, I saw something in Clara's expression that looked like relief. Like maybe, just maybe, she was going to be okay. Looking back now, 10 months after that terrible Saturday night, I finally understand something important about a family story like this. Betrayal never hurts just one person. It spreads outward, touching everyone who loves them. The pain doesn't stop with the one who was deceived. It becomes part of the larger family story that everyone must learn to carry and heal from. I learned that when trust is broken, the scars can last far longer than we expect. Clara trusted Arthur with her whole heart, and he used that trust against her. That is the cruelest kind of betrayal in any family story, when the person who promised to protect you instead turns your love into a weapon. If there is one lesson I want to share from this experience, from this chapter of my own grandpa stories, it is this: never ignore the warning signs. Love should never blind you to reality. When something feels wrong deep in your heart, listen to that feeling. Ask questions. Look closer. Protect the people you love before the damage becomes too great. But this is also one of those grandpa stories that reminds me of something beautiful: resilience. Clara didn't just survive the lies and deception, she grew stronger because of them. She learned to value her own worth, to protect her heart, and to rebuild her life with courage. In the end, that's what many grandpa stories are really about: not the pain itself, but the strength that comes after it. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is tell them a painful truth. Sometimes you have to break an illusion in order to save someone you care about. As the Bible reminds us, the truth will set you free. The truth may hurt at first, but freedom always follows. So if there's one piece of advice I can leave you with, it's this: trust your instincts, protect your family fiercely, and never let anyone convince you that what you feel in your heart is wrong. Thank you for walking this journey with me all the way to the end. I'd truly love to hear your thoughts. What would you do if you were in my position, watching someone you love being deceived? Share your perspective in the comments. And if this story touched you in some way, please consider subscribing so you don't miss future stories like this. A gentle reminder: while this story is inspired by real-life situations and social dynamics, some details have been dramatized for storytelling purposes. If this kind of content isn't for you, feel free to explore other videos that might suit you better.